So for the data mining project, you're going to work in groups of 2 to 4 students, and you're going to go through the full data mining process. So you're going to start by defining some interesting questions, and we'll talk about what it means to be interesting in the course. And the biggest thing for this project is finding the data set. So you're looking for a very large, big data set of millions of data points. So make sure you find a good data set with millions of data points. That's the big thing. And if that's the biggest stumbling block in this project is make sure you start looking for that data set. So I would advise day one that you start looking for a data set that you want to work with. So the idea is you could pick your own project idea for this in your group and help each other to apply the data mining techniques throughout the course on this particular project. The project is divided up into 7 parts. So the first part is just picking the team and the topic. And then part 2, you're going to create this proposal, and it's going to be written up like a conference paper. And you'll be adding to that in the subsequent parts. And then at the end, you'll end up doing a video kind of talking about your project and what you came up with. So you'll be using GitHub, so make sure you understand how to use GitHub. And everyone in your group has access to your GitHub account, and so you can see if something got submitted. And so the big thing here is if the due date is coming up close and it hasn't been submitted yet, then make sure you take a look and take responsibility if the person in charge of that particular part of submitting it might not have done it. So that's something that happens frequently in project teams. All right, so for part 1, this is just determining what your team is, who your team is, and your topic, and looking at your data set. And so, again, the biggest thing is finding millions of data. And so finding that data set and downloading it is a big deal. So sometimes what you'll find is you'll have problems trying to download a large data set, timeout issues or whatnot. You also might find if you're trying to scrape the web or like use Twitter and download tweets or something, a lot of these sites will either charge for access or they'll have a maximum number that you can download per day. So you might not be able to get the data that you're looking for or want if that's your plan. So that's again why you want to start as soon as possible looking for your data set. So for part 1, you're going to create this PDF and the points that you want to specify in here, the title of your project, the team members, list out their first and last names, description. And so here's what the interesting questions. And so we want to distinguish between a simple database query and interesting data mining questions. So that's kind of what you're looking for here, is something for this project for the semester. And then prior work. So it's really important to always look at what other people have already done in your space. So who else has used this data set or similar data sets, and that can help guide you in your own project, what's been done successfully and how you may want to extend it, or if you want to replicate what they've already done. And so this prior work is really helpful. So do take a look at other papers that have done something similar in projects. So list out your data set, where you found it, what the URL is, who's the supplier, so if it's NASA data or from weather.com or whatnot. And whether you have downloaded or not. So this is a huge thing for the success of the project, is getting that data set. So I'll keep saying that. That's really important, and it's a big deal in this class. Then the proposed work. So for here, we're looking at data cleaning and preprocessing the data and integrating data from different sources. So that's what we want to start looking at for what we might have to do in our data. So do you have like a bunch of blanks in the data set? Does it look like there might be some errors in the data set? So things that we're going to have to manipulate and fix before we do our data mining. And the tools you intend to use. And so these things can change because this is part 1, but this gives you some guidance of how you're going to move forward for the project. To submit to your GitHub account, make sure everyone's a contributor, and you're going to have a PDF with your group number, which is the actual number, and title and part 1. Make sure when you submit all your PDFs and details that we're looking to grade, don't put them in any subdirectories. It makes it much harder for us to find or to guess which subdirectory someone put it in. So always just put it in the top directory for your project in GitHub. So for part 2, we have the project proposal paper. So here we're going to use the ACM SIG paper format. So you can find that on this link here. And the key is keep the formatting. So make sure you keep it at the 11-point font, the 1.1 line spacing, and the 2 columns. So don't go changing that if you didn't get it hit the 3-page limit or something. Follow that format. So get used to setting up papers. So for your project proposal, it's about 3 pages and following that template. And you're going to have the problem statement and the motivation, which is going to include what knowledge can be gained, as well as how you can talk about how you can apply that knowledge as well that you gain. The literature survey, which is the same as previous work. Describe and make sure you cite your sources. The proposed work, what do you need to do on that, and the data set that you have, and evaluation metrics, tools, and milestones. For part 3 is the progress report. So here you're going to update your proposal that you have, anything that needs to be updated. The milestones should be updated, what you have completed and what you still have to do. And any results you have so far, you can add as a new topic at the end, any graphs, any correlations that you want to talk about as an example. And then submit into GitHub. For part 4 is the final report. And so this should end up being about 10 to 12 pages using that template. Now, that can seem daunting at the beginning of the semester, but as you went through that process and you added the prior work and you start adding your results, hitting the 10 to 12 pages is usually not that big of a deal for people, especially when you have some of those graphs in there too. So that should be okay. So for here, we want to have an abstract, which is what's the interesting questions. And in the abstract for a paper, conference paper, we usually add a little brief summary of the results. So that way people can see what the questions were and then what the results are and whether they want to read the details in your paper. The introduction, describe the questions in more detail. So the abstract is really short. And then the introduction, you can go into a lot more detail about those questions, why they're important. Related work is the same as prior work, previous work. And so you cite your sources and such there. Data set, where you got it from. So some of this you already have. The main techniques applied. So what did you use for data cleaning? What did you use for your data warehouse and storing the data? Did you use classification? Did you use clustering, and what type? And what are the key results that you got? And so the key results is what did you discover or learn? So what's the knowledge gained? And then application is based on the knowledge that you gained. How can you apply it? So like marketing techniques or product placement or something. There's extra credit here for visualization. So visualization, not just a bunch of graphs like your correlation graph, but in this, we're talking about interesting ways to depict it. So you can use dynamic visualization like D3JS or processingjs.org. Or some kind of interactive site, or you could do some infographic. So again, not just graphs. That's part of the requirement for the project. You might have some graphs to depict your data. For the visualization extra credit, this is something above and beyond. So infographic or dynamic. For part 5, the project code and description. So make sure all your code is in GitHub. And create a README. So README is really important in GitHub to really understand what's going on with your projects and understand what's in the data source. And then your project presentation is part 6. So here, what you want to make sure is your presentation, you're going to create a video and make sure you have the title, who's in there, the questions you asked, how you did your data preparation, tools used, what data mining techniques did you use, and then the knowledge gained and how that can be applied. So some presentation tips, make sure you're using at least 20-point font. A picture really helps more than words. So as opposed to putting a wall of text on there or full sentences, consider doing something shorter or pictures. Make sure everyone speaks during the presentation, so in the video, and keep it to 6 minutes. So you should learn how to be very succinct in reporting your results. And then you'll have 2 submissions here. One is your slide deck and one is your video. Last part is the peer evaluation and interview question. So in Moodle, you're going to fill out your peer evaluation and answer some questions and submit that into Moodle. And that's it for the project.